He had everything: money, power, influence. He owned an empire and believed that nothing could bring it down. But in a matter of days, it all disappeared. His name made bankruptcy headlines, his friends disappeared, and luxury gave way to despair. With no money, no home, and no one to help him, he fell into oblivion. Now, lost and humiliated, he finds refuge in the most unlikely place. With a simple woman who has nothing but her own willpower. He will have to learn to live without wealth, without privilege, without the illusion of control. But can a man who has lost everything find something even more valuable? Or is he doomed to repeat the same mistakes that led to his downfall? This is the story of a fresh start, where the real challenge is not to recover what has been lost, but to discover what really matters. The champagne glass clinked against the balcony glass as Mark gazed out at the illuminated view of the city below. The night wind caressed his face, and a satisfied smile appeared as he saw his reflection in the glass. He had it all: money, power, influence. "Here's to the empire I've built." He raised his glass, surrounded by businessmen and socialites. The guests applauded. In the middle of the luxurious hall, his girlfriend, a stunning model, smiled at him. The music played loudly, the laughter echoed, and the world seemed to be spinning in his favor, until his cell phone vibrated on the table. He frowned when he saw the lawyer's name. He picked it up. "Mark, we need to talk now." "Now? I'm in the middle of a celebration." "Forget the celebration. We've lost everything. The company went bust." The sound around him seemed to fade away. He laughed in disbelief. "This has got to be a joke." "It's not. Your partner embezzled millions. Investors are withdrawing their capital. The banks have frozen our accounts." The cup slipped out of his hand and crashed to the floor. "This can't be happening," he whispered. His girlfriend's face contracted in concern. "What happened?" Mark didn't answer. He marched into the office and typed in the password to access the company's finances. The numbers that appeared on the screen made his stomach sink. He blinked a few times, trying to find an error, but there was no error. Everything was red. Debts, blocked accounts, bankruptcy. He grabbed the phone. "My personal money?" "Mark, your account was used as collateral. The bank has frozen everything. You have nothing." The blood drained from his face. "This is a nightmare." He left the office in heavy steps. When he looked around, he noticed that the gazes around him had changed. The glow of flattery was gone, replaced by a subtle distance. His girlfriend grabbed his arm. "Mark, what's going on?" He stared at her, but his mind was spinning in despair. Then his cell phone rang again. "I need to answer it." She let him go. It was one of his business friends. "I heard you had a problem. It's temporary." Mark clenched his fists. "Right. Good luck with that. Good luck with that." The line went dead. He returned to the lounge. The atmosphere seemed different. Whispered conversations, averted glances. His girlfriend picked up her bag. "I've got to go. Call me when you've sorted everything out." "Wait, what?" "Mark, you know how it is. I need stability." She left. And in that instant he realized he was completely alone. The echo of Mark's footsteps resounded through the huge, now empty hall. The party was over, and along with it, his life as he knew it. The lights of the mansion still shone, but they seemed cold, distant. He picked up his cell phone and dialed his lawyer. "Tell me you have a plan." The voice on the other end came through somberly. "Mark, there's nothing to be done. Your assets will be frozen, your properties auctioned off. The creditors are already after you." He felt a bitter taste in his mouth. "I can recover. I can get investors, renegotiate. Nobody wants to invest in a bankrupt man." Those words went through Mark like a blade. "This is temporary. I built this empire. I can rebuild it." "Mark, your empire was never really yours. It belonged to the banks, to the shareholders. Now it belongs to the creditors." Mark hung up the phone without hearing the rest. He walked to the bar, picked up a bottle of whiskey and poured himself a glass, but his hands were shaking so badly that the liquid overflowed. The next day, reality knocked on the door. Literally. Bailiffs arrived with papers and orders to seize the mansion. "You can't do this." One of the men just shrugged. "We can, and we will. You have until the end of the day to leave." Mark wanted to shout, to fight, but he knew it would do no good. Within hours, everything he owned had been packed up and taken away. He stood in the middle of the empty room, feeling the crushing weight of failure. He picked up his cell phone and tried to call some friends. Number unavailable. Next attempt. "Sorry, Mark, but I can't get involved in this." He called 5 more numbers, all to no avail. He really was alone. Night fell, and Mark drove aimlessly through the city. The car was one of the few things left. With no money and nowhere to stay, he ended up sleeping in the back seat, parked on a random street. He woke up to a knock on the window. "Hey, buddy, this isn't a hotel." It was a security guard. Mark blinked, confused, feeling the stiffness in his body. "I'm going out." He started the car and drove off again, but now his mind was in a whirl. His stomach rumbled, but he realized he didn't have a single penny. The last straw came at noon, when a tow truck pulled up next to his car. "The vehicle is in the company's name. It had been confiscated." Mark watched as his last possession was taken away. He stood on the sidewalk, not knowing where to go, and then he started walking. He walked until his feet hurt, until he realized that he had arrived in a neighborhood he had never noticed before. Hunger struck, and he realized he didn't even have a coin in his pocket. His empire no longer existed. He no longer existed. And that's when he met Anna. The smell of freshly baked bread hung in the air as Mark pulled up in front of a small corner bakery. The shop window displayed golden loaves of bread, homemade cakes, and small pastries that made his stomach rumble in protest. He hadn't eaten for almost a whole day. He entered hesitantly, feeling out of place. He approached the counter and pointed to a loaf of bread. "How much is that?" The waitress, an elderly woman in a blue apron, looked at him suspiciously. "2." Mark reached into his pocket, but all he found was lint. An uncomfortable silence settled in. "It's just a loaf of bread." He tried to argue, but the woman crossed her arms. "If you can't pay, there are people who can." Behind him, the queue began to grow. Murmurs broke out. Mark felt his face burn. The man who used to spend thousands on expensive dinners was now begging for a loaf of bread. Then a voice sounded next to him. "Put it on my bill." He turned and saw a woman holding a shopping bag. Her face was simple, without makeup, her hair tied up in an unpretentious way. "I don't need charity." She arched an eyebrow. "Would you rather starve for pride?" Mark remained silent. The woman paid and handed him the bread. "If you need more, there's a market out front." She turned to leave, but something inside him made him call out to her. "Why?" She stopped and shrugged. "Because I needed it once." Mark hesitated, then followed her. They walked together in silence to a busy square. Anna, that was her name, was carrying a shopping bag and moved naturally among the vendors. "You don't seem like the type to hang around here," she said, without looking at him. "And you don't seem the type to help strangers," she laughed. "If you think I'm expecting something in return, I'm not. But can I ask you a question?" "What? What happened to you?" Mark felt a lump in his throat. He could tell the truth. He could say that he had been a tycoon, that he had lost everything, that he wasn't just anyone. But would that make any difference? So he just answered, "Life happened." Anna didn't insist. "If you need a place to sleep, I have a sofa." He frowned. "You don't even know me." "I don't, but I know that look. I've seen it before." Mark hesitated. Acceptance meant admitting that he really had nothing left. But he didn't anymore. "All right then. Good. But I'll tell you right away, in my house you'll have to help." She started walking and he followed, not knowing that this decision would change everything. Anna's house was small, with simple walls and weathered furniture, an old sofa, a bookcase with few books, a cramped kitchen. Mark entered hesitantly, feeling out of place. "It's not a palace, but at least it has a roof," said Anna, closing the door behind him. Mark looked around uneasily. "Do you live here alone?" "Yes, I do." He frowned. And you're not afraid to bring a stranger home. Anna let out a short laugh. If you do anything wrong, I'll throw you out myself. Mark realized she was serious. She went into the kitchen and put a plate on the table, rice, beans, and a piece of chicken. Mark stared at the food. Is that all? Anna raised her eyebrows. If you don't want it, there are people who would gladly take it. He lowered his head and picked up his fork. The taste was simple, but his hunger was greater than his pride. He ate in silence while Anna washed some dishes. Do you always help strangers like this? She shrugged. No, but you strike me as someone who needs a fresh start. Mark let out a bitter laugh. A fresh start? I've lost everything. My money, my house, my life. Maybe this is the chance I needed. He stopped chewing. Opportunity? I went from the top to the bottom. Anna dried her hands on the tea towel and crossed her arms. Maybe her top was an illusion. Mark remained silent. After eating, Anna took a blanket and threw it on the sofa. You can sleep here, but tomorrow, if you want to continue, you'll have to help. Mark looked at her. Help with what? Work. You know what that is, right? He frowned, offended. Of course I do. I used to manage hundreds of employees. But have you ever done any heavy lifting? Mark didn't answer. Anna smiled. Then tomorrow you'll learn. Good night. She switched off the light and went into the bedroom. Mark stood there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. All he had now was a hard sofa, a thin blanket, and a woman he hardly knew. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't completely alone. The smell of coffee filled the small space when Mark opened his eyes. The hard sofa had left his body aching, and for a moment he forgot where he was. But then he saw the peeling ceiling, heard the clatter of dishes, and remembered he was no longer in his mansion. Anna appeared in the kitchen doorway holding a cup. Good morning. Time to get up. Mark rubbed his face. Sleeping on this sofa is worse than spending the night on the floor. So work hard, and maybe one day you'll get a bed. He huffed, but got up. On the table there was black coffee and bread and butter. No imported croissants or fancy omelettes. He sat down and took a piece of bread. What do I have to do? Anna finished washing the dishes and picked up a canvas bag. I need help at the market. Carrying bags, organizing the fruit on the stall. Basic work. Mark rolled his eyes. You want me to become a market worker? Anna leaned on the sink and crossed her arms. If you'd rather go back to the street, the door is open. Mark took a deep breath. He had no choice. The market was a busy place, full of voices and smells. Anna walked easily between the stalls, greeting people by name. Mark followed her, uncomfortable with the proximity of the people. She stopped at a stall and handed money to a man in a dirty apron. It's more expensive today, Anna, said the vendor. All right, that's how it works. Mark frowned. Will you pay more without arguing? Anna looked at him sideways. Prices go up, so do costs. It's not his fault. Mark crossed his arms. In my world, you always negotiate to get the upper hand, and maybe that's why you've lost everything. The sentence hit him like a punch. Carrying the heavy bags back to the house, Mark realized the real weight of the work. He felt sweat trickling down his back. For the first time in a long time, he was really dirty. When they arrived, Anna pointed to the table. Now sort the good fruit from the bad. Mark snorted but obeyed. He cut up some oranges and removed the bad parts from the bananas. By the time he'd finished, his fingers were sticky. Finished. Anna looked at his work and grimaced. Bad. You cut out good parts and left bad parts? You have to pay attention. Mark threw his hands up in the air. I ran $1 million company. I don't know how to deal with fruit. Anna stepped forward and looked him in the eye. And where did your $1 million company take you? Silence. Start again. Mark clenched his fists, swallowed his pride, and started again. That night, he collapsed on the sofa, exhausted. His body ached. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had done something real. The alarm clock rang at 5 in the morning. Mark opened his eyes with difficulty, his body still aching from the day before. He turned over on the sofa and pulled up the blanket, trying to ignore the annoying sound. Then he felt something hit his chest. A dishcloth. "Get up. Work doesn't wait." Anna's voice was firm. Mark grumbled but sat up. "Do you really have to get up so early?" Anna picked up the empty bags. "If you want food on the table, yes. Now get going." He huffed but got up. Soon they were at the market, where Anna was selling fruit and vegetables from a small stall. The flow of customers started slowly, but as the sun rose, people piled in. "Your change." "Thank you. Come again." Anna smiled at a lady who had bought some oranges. Mark watched with his arms crossed. "Do you really like this?" "I like what I do. I like knowing that my work feeds people." "Did you like what you did?" He opened his mouth to answer but then closed it. "Did I? Money has always been your motivation, but the work itself?" Before he could think any further, a familiar voice called out to him. "Mark?" He turned and saw a man in a suit, an old friend from the days of luxury. "So it's true. You really did break down." Mark swallowed. "What are you doing here?" "Business. My new office is nearby. And you? Are you selling fruit?" Humiliation burned inside him. "It's not what it looks like." The man smiled. "Of course, but I have a proposition for you. Can we talk?" Anna watched him in silence. Mark hesitated. He accepted. They walked away from the stall and sat down in a cafe. "You know you have talent, Mark. I can help you get back to the top." "And why would you do that?" The man smiled. "Because I can profit from it, just like we've always done. The money's there, Mark. Just take it." Mark looked at the cup of coffee in front of him. Was this what he wanted? He looked outside and saw Anna serving customers, smiling as if her job really mattered. "I need to think about it." The man laughed. "Think? You're not a thinking man, Mark. You act. But fine, I'll give you a day." Mark returned to the tent with a turbulent mind. Anna stared at him. What did he want? Mark sighed. "An offer to return to my old world." Anna wiped her hands on her apron. "And what do you want?" He couldn't answer. That night, lying on the sofa, he stared at the ceiling. It was his chance to regain what he had lost. But did he really want that life back? The sun had barely risen when Mark opened his eyes. He hadn't slept a wink all night. His old friend's proposal echoed in his mind. To get back on top, recovering his fortune. It all sounded tempting. He got up, wiped his hands across his face, and went into the kitchen where he found Anna cutting up papaya. "You haven't slept," she said, without even looking at him. Mark sighed and sat down. "I need to make a decision." Anna placed a cup of coffee in front of him and crossed her arms. "You already have. You just haven't realized it yet." He frowned. "What are you talking about? If you really wanted your old life back, you would have accepted it by now. But it's here." He picked up the cup, turning it around in his hands. "What if I'm making a mistake? I could get it all back." Anna sat down opposite him. "All of what?" "Those people who abandoned you. The money that made you feel powerful but never satisfied. The luxury that disappeared at the first sign of a crisis." Mark remained silent. She continued. "You spent weeks here. You worked. You got your hands dirty. You ate simple food. And for the first time, you saw the people around you as something other than numbers. Is that worth less than that empty life?" Mark's chest tightened. The answer was clear, but he was afraid to say it out loud. Then his cell phone rang. He picked it up. "So what?" he thought. Mark took a deep breath. "I did." "Good, good. So we're closed?" He looked at Anna. She wasn't saying anything, just watching. Mark closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, his mind was made up. "No." The silence on the other side was piercing. "What?" "I said no, I don't want this life anymore." An ironic laugh came over the line. "Mark, be rational. You were born for this. There's nothing but money." Mark smiled slightly. "That's where you're wrong." He hung up. Anna didn't smile, but there was pride in her eyes. "Now you've made a decision." Mark let out the breath he hadn't even realized he was holding. "What do I do now?" Anna stood up and threw him a cloth. Now we work. And for the first time in a long time, Mark felt that he was on the right track. The smell of freshly baked bread wafted through the small room. Mark carefully picked up the hot tray and placed the loaves on the counter. There was a lot of activity at the stall that morning, and he no longer minded the hustle and bustle of the market. "Good morning, Mrs. Marta. The bananas are fresh today." He smiled as he handed a bunch to the old lady who was always passing by. "Thank you, dear." "You're good at this," Mark laughed. A few weeks ago, this idea would have been absurd, but now selling fruit and bread was more than a job. It was something real. Anna came up beside him, wiping her hands on her apron. Not bad for an ex-magician. He leaned against the counter and looked at her with a half-smile. "I think I'm getting the hang of it." She raised an eyebrow. "Getting the hang of it? Yesterday you almost dropped a whole sack of flour on the floor." He laughed, feeling light-hearted. Anna pointed to the money in the till. "Do you know what's different between what we get here and what you used to get?" Mark looked at the folded bills and shrugged. "Every penny came from real work." She nodded. "And it will never be taken from us the way your old money was." Mark reflected on this. His empire had collapsed because he never built something solid, something real. He just rode the wave of money, surrounded by people who only stood by him as long as they profited from him. Now he felt the difference. That night, after closing the tent, they walked together through the streets, lit only by the old street lamps. Mark looked down at his hands dirty with flour and fruit, feeling something he hadn't felt for a long time. Peace. "What now?" he asked. Anna put her hands in her pockets and smiled. "Now we carry on. The future doesn't have to be grand, Mark. It just needs to be real." He looked at her, he really did, and he saw someone who had never wanted anything from him apart from his presence. Something warm and sincere grew inside him. He took Anna's hand without thinking. She didn't pull. Mark smiled. "This time I'm ready." And for the first time he knew it wasn't an empty promise.